Good evening, everyone. This is Robin Kearney Frazier. I am the Guild's Master of Guilds of Requiem. Tonight would normally be our Homesteaders and Preppers Guild meeting, but we're having a little bit of a pirate takeover with our Amateur Radio Guild. I'd like to thank everyone who's joining us for the evening. While this looks like it's going to be structured, I can tell you right now, if you see some information that you would like to add, change, feel free to jump right on in and help with the conversation tonight. I am by no means an expert on two-way radio communications. I did start out on CBs when I was old enough to push the button so that it would Roger beep at me. So for many years I was little beeper, and then I kind of worked my way all the way to the ham adventure, again, round 2.0. And I'm working towards getting my extra certification back. So we are going to just jump right on in it. And the highlights of today's voyage is we're going to go over some basics of fundamental radio communication. And this is where I definitely need help. I like talking on them, but I don't always know how they work. The types of two-way radio systems, some requirements and licensings that you need to know about them. We'll get a group discussion going on what are the pros and cons of some of the popular radio systems. What you need to get that first station going. Handhelds are great, but they don't get you out too far. And then we'll just continue on with some group discussion and knowledge sharing. So how radios transmit and receive signals. It gets really complicated, but at the same time, it's really simplistic. Radios convert sound or data into radio waves that transmit information through the air and over distances. We put out one, it gets received by, gets put out by a transmitter, it gets received by a receiver. And what it does is it uses radio waves and converts them back into usable audio and data signals for communication. I got some next few screens will have some demonstrations on what that looks like. But what it allows for is two-way communication. Oh, I should have double-checked this thing. That's a lot of redundancy. So understanding modulation. We have our AM, which is our amplitude modulation, our FM, which is frequency modulation, and single sideband modulation. The AM modulations, or AM, it varies the amplitude of the carrier signal to encode information affecting the signal range and susceptibility to noise. Henry, feel free to jump in on here. I'm stumbling over. I'm eyeball deep in trying to remember everything as I get ready to do round 2 of my general testing. And it's kind of called a sine wave. AM, you have your frequencies, you have your amplitude, which is how high it is. And I'm trying to use my mouse instead of pointing at the screen with my finger. The amplitude modulation is how high the peaks and valleys are. So that is what determines the carrier signal in that frequency. For the frequency modulation, that is how close together they are. And then a single sideband transmits only on the lower or the upper portion of those frequencies. And that can optimize our bandwidth usage and improves the signal efficiency. I have, like I said, just some handhelds right now, but my Cobra handheld does let me do some upper sideband, and I'm getting a lot more reception with it than just being on the regular FM frequency that it allows me to have. So what do we do with these? They give us different frequency bands, and there are 3 main ones that we look at. We have our high frequency band. This is our 3 to 30 megahertz. It has a long distance communication due to its ability to reflect off of the ionosphere. Our very high frequency band, which is 30 to 300 megahertz. It's ideal for urban outdoor communications. That's what a lot of your My mind just totally went blank. It's where your GMRSs and your FRSs, that's your general mobile radio services, are generally on your VHF bands. No, UHF, because they're 400 megahertz. Told you I'm still relearning all of this. So it's your ultra high frequency. They are indoor and dense urban coverage. So these are probably going to be in your cities. And if I remember correctly, nope, I'm not going to open mouth and insert foot for not remembering correctly. So this kind of gives you a quick overview of how the high frequency works. You have your ship that sends off the radio frequency, it bounces off the ionosphere, and it comes back down. These are common for your military. Your 10-meter band is what's frequently used. 10 meter, 11 meters CB, and then you have your 12 meter, and that when we're talking meter, we're talking the distance between one peak to the next peak. Like I said, Henry, if I'm saying this wrong, you gotta let me know. And then we have our very high frequency, and that's the 30 to 300 megahertz. These are more of your line of sight. This is going to be your shortwave radio communications, your little walkie-talkies that you can get at Walmart. They are shortwave line of sight. Most of your GMRSs are shortwave line of sight. Your TV broadcasting before we went digital was on line of sight VHF. The ultra high frequency bands are the 300 megahertz to the 3 gigahertz. This is once again your short range coverage, but this also gets into your Wi-Fi, your GPS, your digital TVs. It's really great for when you're in an urban setting and you need to get through buildings, get your signal through material. So we have two types of two-way radio systems. And I need to, yes, I'm shuffling my bar so that I can see things. Oops, come back. So the first type that we have is our CB. Actually, this is kind of what all major four categories of two-way radio communications is your CB, otherwise known as citizen band. It's a typically short-range communication. You do not need a license. It is usually used for personal and business purposes. A lot of us grew up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s where we had Smokey and the Bandit. Your truck drivers like to use them. There are still a lot of truck drivers that do use them. From where I'm at, I can hear them on Interstate 10. So our truckers are using them, but we are also hitting a lot of people who have more than their 4 watts of power that they're talking on what's called skip land using the ionosphere. And I heard Honolulu, Hawaii the other day coming through. So you can get distance with them if you put a lot of power to them. Your family radio services and your MERS is license-free communication. They're moderate range, usually 2 to 5 miles. They are for family, small group uses. When we were doing events down at Lake Corpus Christi, we brought these little handy two-way radios from Walmart. We got them in a 10-pack for like $100, and they worked perfect for us. We were able to get across the lake when some of our kids went hiking, and they got themselves all the way on the other side of the lake and discovered that they were now too tired to come back. They were able to radio us so that we could go get them. The next one is the General Mobile Radio Service. This does require a license. It is $35, and it covers the entire immediate family. It is an extended range. You do have a little bit higher power for use. You'll start getting into the ability to use repeaters. I do have a GMRS radio. I can reach our repeater, which is about 10 miles as the crow flies from me, and I've been able to talk to the other side of San Antonio. So for those not aware, I am on the northwest side of San Antonio, and my son lives over on the northeast side of San Antonio, and I've been able to talk to him. Then we have our amateur radio. This is a global communication, has various frequencies that you can use. You do have to be licensed, and in order to get that license, you have to pass your technical knowledge. So that means you're studying for a test. It is $35 for each level of license. Testing is, depending on who you go through, is usually between $5 and $15. A lot of people, there are a lot of places that offer classes for free. So it is helpful. The ARRL is the American Radio. I'm just going to have a wonderful night here as my brain seizes up on me. I'm so sorry. It is Amateur Radio, National Association for Amateur Radio. They put out the books that have the questions and answers on it. There's a lot of people who just study the answers and do their best to memorize and pass the test that way. And then you have others who actually want to understand the information. If you ever see me publish about Scott Reinfeld, he puts on a fantastic 2-day course via Zoom. He gets deep into the knowledge of why radios work. Really hoping that Fernando was going to be able to make this, because this is a new category that's come out in the past several years using digital advancements. We have our DMR and our mesh-tastic communication forms. They provide radio clarity. They can compare to traditional analog radios. They improve the communication experience. Sorry, got a dog scared me. Both DMR and mesh-tastic support encryption, meaning that you can have secure and private communications over radio networks. Basically, you are going through a computer or a digital piece of equipment. It encodes it. Whoever else is on the other end that has the same equipment and the same applications, programs can decode it. The mesh-tastic enables networked communication by creating a mesh network and expands your radio coverage beyond the traditional limits. This is not dependent upon the internet. If I'm understanding it correctly, it's not dependent upon the internet. Basically, everybody in your group has one of these little devices that you're connected to, and you're making your own network. So the applications and how communities can use each system. We have the hobbyist radio usage, which is where a lot of us start. It's radio systems that are used by hobbyists for personal communication, experimentation, fostering community, and skill development. Give me just a second here. Matt, can you turn the AC down? It's like really high. Yeah, I'm sweating. Our AC hasn't kicked on in a little bit, and I'm sitting here dripping sweat. Emergency responders use radio systems to communicate during disasters and urgent situations. Most of them have gone to an encrypted digital system. Areas like here out in Bandera County, we still are using analog. So you can look up what the frequencies are and you can listen in. You cannot interrupt communications though. Business applications, security companies, truck drivers, industrial corporations, they use them for internal communications and coordinating the operations such as logistics. Outdoor enthusiasts are using them for safe and reliable communication during activities like hiking, camping, and adventure sports. That's kind of where I kind of got, I started out in CB land, and then as we were doing outdoor events, we kind of kept going and, learning more. So there are regulations and licensing requirements. So the FCC is the government's regulates the radio spectrum to prevent interference and ensures efficient use for all communication services. They are the governing agency that tells us if you have no license, you can only be on these frequencies. If you have a business license, then we're going to set aside this frequency for you. If you have your GMRS, then you can use these frequencies, also known as channels. And then when you get onto amateur radio, they tell us based on what level of licensing you have as to which frequencies that you can use for communications. They do have rules that you cannot interfere with emergency communications. They do, and a lot of it's just, let's stay polite to each other. Somebody's having a conversation and you accidentally interrupt them. Usually they're pretty nice to say, hey, we got a conversation going on. You take it to a different channel, or you wait until they're clear and then you go back to monitoring. Safety enforcement is up to the FCC, and there's a lot of people that are saying, no, they're not going after these people. If you are ever on CB and you hear somebody going 11111, it's a gentleman that everyone tries to pin down as to where he is, and he is on an ungodly amount of power that when he keys up, he's the only thing you can hear. There have been rumors that the FCC has tracked him down a couple times, taken his equipment away, and then he's just right back on the air, or someone else takes over as him. It could be one of those pirate Robert type things. So for licensing requirements, GMRS, amateur radio, and some DMR systems do require official licenses for legal operation and use. The procedures, once the FCC website is up, and from my understanding, the FCC website should be back up on the 18th. I've been trying to get a copy of one of my licenses, and it's been down with the government shutdown, but it's supposed to be opening back up on the 18th. You apply for an FRN, which is a FCC radio number. Then you apply for your GMRS license. That in itself is a technical challenge. If you ever need help, shoot me an email or shoot me a message, and I'll try to walk you through the process once the website's back up. It's like I said, it's $35. It covers your immediate family. So it covers me, my husband, my kids, my mom when she was down here. Amateur radio does require testing and licensing fees. Licensed operators must comply with regulations and maintain responsible use of radio communication services at all time. You should also be polite and professional. We all know that does not happen on the CB world. So we always try to give a little bit of a word of caution to not necessarily have little ears if you're on the CB around you, because they're going to hear some big words that we may not want them to know. The unlicensed operation, once again, is the CB, the Family Radio Service, and the Multi-Use Radio Service Guidelines. They offer communications without the need for licensing, making them accessible to the public. There are power and usage limits. I believe CBs are only 4 watts. FRS and MERS, I believe, are also 4 watts. 2 to 4 watts, I want to say. They're supposed to be. While license-free, they are constraints that the users must follow to avoid interference and legal issues. The pros and cons of the popular radio systems. Advantages and drawbacks to the analog system. Analog provides simplicity, affordability, and it's compatible across many devices. There are some who have their Bofang collections, and it becomes a gateway drug to getting bigger and better toys. You gotta save your pennies for some of the bigger projects, but they're still affordable for the most part. It's once you get to the antennas and everything else that it can get a little bit more expensive. The limitations of them is there is more noise interference, there's fewer features, and it's not as efficient on the frequency spectrum usage that you can have on it. Strengths and limitations of digital radio systems is that it has enhanced quality. You're able to receive clearer, more reliable audio signals compared to the analog radios. It does have data and encryption features. They support encryption of data and transmission, improving security, additional functionalities. There is, I think it's still operational right now, but the International Space Station has SSTV signals that they regularly broadcast down. You do need to be able to have a DMR or a supporting program to decrypt those images. There are several enthusiasts out there that will send their own images through digital means for you to, for your program to decrypt so that you can see them. It's kind of fun to get, you're sitting there on Facebook and you get a bunch of memes, and then you start going through the digital. Getting memes via two-way radio has been kind of fun. It is higher cost. There is more complexity, more technical stuff that you need to learn. But like with any skill, once you learn it, the more you use it, the faster you're going to go, the more proficient you'll become. There is some challenges, is that different digital radio standards can vary compatibility issues across the devices and networks. Like I was saying, if I have one type of program and Heather, you have a different type of program, and Henry has a third, we may or may not be able to decrypt what each other is sending. So if they're not completely compatible, we may get a fuzzy picture, may not be quite as clear as we would hope it would be. But if we're all using the same program, then the chances are we should get a nice, clean, clear picture between the three of us. So when you're looking at which ones do you want to do, you got to consider your accessibility, your cost, and your reliability. With being in a prepper community, we're all about being ready. So that means we want to start learning how to use our radios now, getting our system set up now. And, there is a cost associated to it. So that means you do have to save up for it. You do have to do maybe bits and pieces, maybe get the radio this year and then save up and get your antenna next year and just start building yourself up that way. So the cost plays a crucial role in selecting which type of system you want to use. If you're not very technically minded and you don't have a husband who's an electrician, you might want to have a little bit more help cost-wise, because you're looking at the technical aspects of getting your SWR to match your antenna and the radio so that you don't burn your power supply out. The reliability is that the range can be dependent upon weather and atmospheric conditions. I heard it was hit or miss as to whether people were being affected of the sunspots that we had just the last few days. If power's knocked out, if you don't have an alternate power source, that's going to affect your operational reliability. So what do you need for setting up a basic base station? Essential components are a transceiver. That is a apparatus that sends and receives radio waves, and it helps establish the communication over the network. You do need to have a power supply. Even with your little handhelds or your mobile base station, your mobile radios, your base stations, you do have to have a power supply for them to run. You do have to have an antenna. If you have an antenna, when I got my CB radio, it had this little tiny antenna, and I was lucky to hear my neighbor across the street. I now have one that telescopes up pretty good, and I can hit Interstate 10 from Highway 16. So, and they can hear me, so it goes both ways. So the antenna is very important. Accessories and connectors. One of the biggest accessories that I have to worry about is with the Bofang radios. They have a special adapter that you can use for programming them. And if you don't have the right, let me see if I can get up here and show you if you can see that in the little picture. It's a specific connector to the Bofang radio so that you can program it. So accessories and Connectors are important. I already have a small collection of what I need for plugging in antennas, for using my cable cords, getting everything together, microphones. You have to have the whole package, otherwise it doesn't work. And I talked about antenna tuning. It helps maximize your signal strength, and it reduces interference. To get the proper tuning, you want to use SWR meters and antenna tuners. I am still learning all that, so Henry, if you want to jump in on this, this is where I'm struggling, is on antennas. I guess that wasn't the Henry that I thought it was.
Okay.
You do have some safety and installation practices that you need to be worried about, because you are dealing with wire metal. You do need to make sure that have everything grounded to prevent electrical hazards and improve equipment safety. You do have to be aware of where you're placing your antenna. You need to stay at least 20 feet away from power lines. If you've got a 30-foot antenna, it's going to be 30 feet plus the 20 feet away from a power line. You need to adhere to local rules. If you're in an HOA, yes, right now they can tell you where you can put your antenna, how tall your antenna can be, how or not be, if it can't be visible. We're out here in the country, so we're not quite told, he's the only one that says I can't put a 200-foot tower up.
Yeah.
That in our pocketbook. Okay, I think we're down to just discussing and talking about radios. I think this is my last one. Sorry, I did this PowerPoint 2 or 3 days ago before all the weather hit, and all the weather changes. So I'm struggling with remembering what I was going to talk about with each one. Real world experience with the two-way radios. Like I said, my biggest one is range. I don't have enough power to be getting out there, and my distance is limited because I can't get an antenna up above our trees. Henry, I see it looks like you got your volume turned on now.
Yeah, I turned it on. I just
Okay.
have questions because I'm looking, trying to figure out. I've got family in Kerrville and San Antonio, Lake Hills. Trying to figure out what's the best radio option to get in touch with them, to stay in touch with them in case of emergencies. Like, use some kind of 2-meter rig or.
I have right now I am actually using a CB radio, and that's how I'm staying in contact with friends in Bandera County. I have a GMRS and we have a repeater here in Bandera County. I think we've got 2 of them. And I'm able to, when I get my son on the other side of San Antonio on that same repeater, we can talk to each other. Mikey and I have talked to each other a couple of times off of that same repeater. When they were doing Kerrville and they were doing all the rescue operations, somebody had brought a portable repeater, and that's how they were able to make sure they had the communications a little bit better. With the radio services, a lot of it does have to do with line of sight. Without spending a ton of money, that's your biggest concern, is line of sight. If you said Kerrville, hill country, we deal with a lot of hills. Of course, it's a hill country. I actually have a 10-meter Bofang, which is one of these actually right here on the screen. And I reached Dallas the other day on it.
Hmm.
I'm not going to admit where I was sitting, other than there's probably imprints of my butt cheeks on the hood of my van, so that I could get my antenna up a little bit higher. To be able to make that distance. So, and a lot of it you have to remember is you need to start using it now. Don't wait until, you know, it's the last moment, because there is a large learning curve. It really doesn't matter which component you go with, there's always a learning curve. You still need to worry about your antenna and your radio matching. And I'm
Oh.
sorry, Henry, I thought you were a different Henry, that he was my extra course teacher.
I'm kind of more.
I haven't physically met him. So yeah, I mean, a lot of it's just deciding what it is that's going to work best for your family, and how much you're able to put into it. I mean, not just financial wise, but, you know, understanding the technology. I hope to have, yeah, I'm going to have, I'm going to be at our event in March with CB. We've got a gentleman that's going to be there with GMRS, and he also does Meshtastic. And then I am waiting to hear back from somebody in San Antonio that does amateur radio, and he's a volunteer exam coordinator as well, so he's very knowledgeable. I'm just restarting out. I stopped doing anything with radios back in 1996, so I'm having to relearn everything. The gentleman in Kendall County, they're in Bernie, they meet at the library the first Thursday of every month. Maybe try taking a stop there and talking with them as well. They're all very knowledgeable. They're all very helpful. But that's about the max of my knowledge that I have right now. Is just what they are, and needing to understand what you can do. We have myself on the west side of San Antonio. We've got Mikey on the east side of San Antonio. My son's northeast, and then we have Iris, who is north, about an hour north of San Antonio. And we're all hoping to be able to talk to each other on a 10 meter, with everybody having their technician's license. It's just a matter of having us all on the same frequency.
Same frequency and off of, I assume, the same repeater, because without kind of out of luck.
Well, with the repeaters, there's only so many frequencies that our repeaters are set on. So we might have one repeater here that uses the 144, you know, the 144.550 megahertz. And then on the far side of San Antonio, there's another repeater that has that same one, but in between there's maybe 2 or 3 others that have different frequencies. Let me see if I can. Give me a second here. I'm going to pull up.
Is there a map or something?
Yeah, I'm going to pull up a repeater map here. Give me just a second here. I'm cycling through my screens.
Because I wouldn't expect to be able to reach Kerrville or Bernie or someplace like that without something like that.
When they were doing all of the search and rescue stuff, I was hearing some of the chatter, not very clearly, but I was hearing the chatter. Give me a second here. Theater bolt. Okay, let's see if I can get in here.
Now, I have heard about this Meshtastic and this LoRa, and I'm not really sure what's involved in any kind of licensing, or if there is on some of those.
From my understanding, you have to have at least a GMRS licensing. I could be wrong. I know some of them utilize the amateur radio bands. Okay, give me just a second here. Okay, come on. Give me a second. Trying to share my computer here again. If you see a bunch of stuff that looks weird, I'm sorry. So this is repeater book. And we're going to click on Texas. And I'm going to say 10 meter. This right here are all of the 10 meter frequencies. Open means that you can get to them. So all of your repeaters on 10 meter are going to have these frequencies available to them. There might be some that are more, some that are less. Let's see here. Let me get rid of this. Let's do, what's the other big one? 2 meter. So you can see here, all these frequencies.
There's one in Kerrville.
Yeah, there's one in Kerrville, right here, the 145.150. As you can see, there's several of these repeaters, and they go all the way around the world. Will have these listings of frequencies as repeaters. So when somebody says, I want to put a repeater up, they go talk to their frequency coordinator. They say, okay, fine. We need more coverage in, say, 145.110. So they're going to assign your repeater that frequency. You figure out what your up and down is, your contact tones, and then anybody who's on that frequency around the world can hear you. So we have, let me just a second here. I'm gonna pull up my Chirp here. Chirp is a program that you use for programming your Baofangs and other radios. Oh, wrong one. So these are all the frequencies and the repeaters that I have near me that fall under the 10 meter band. Where you see here the tone mode and the tone, these are repeaters. If there's nothing here, then that's just a frequency. This 146.520, that is a common frequency that people use to call out on and see if they can get make connections. See here, down here you can see I have 2 repeaters. One's Bandera, and then I think that one is Kendall County, if I remember correctly. But they're the same frequency that I can hit them off of both, bounce them off of both. So yeah, I mean, the biggest thing with family communications is you need to know which frequency you're going to be on, which frequency you're using, the time. You know, so one of the things that they tell us to practice when you're doing preparations is it's every 3 hours for 3 minutes, you monitor a radio station, a radio frequency. So say I have my family set up on the 145.15. So we've decided at 8 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock is our first check-in time. We're going to turn our radio on, and for 3 minutes, we're going to listen for each other's activity. We'll be able to do a quick catch-up communication. I can find out, hey, where are you? They can say, you know, we're so far away from home base. Then 3 hours later, we're going to turn our radios on again and update with each other. So your family may decide, you know what, we're going to do 147 and 10. So that's kind of, you know, and you might be on that same frequency, but because you're at a different time, you're not going to overlap with our conversations. I don't know if that helped answer your question or gave you more questions.
No, I'm just still curious on the, if using a certain repeater, you know, frequency there, being in different locations, if you're still going to be able to you know, each.
There's a lot of variables in that, you know, not so much, but your radios, how much power do you have on your radio? How high is your antenna? How much reach are you getting? Are you getting over obstructions? Is there weather happening? Because like with the sunspots, everything was really slow on CB. I wasn't getting hardly any contact at all. but on other bands, there was a lot more contact happening.
I'm
So-
kind of
Mhm.
probably going to be mobile with a vehicle with an antenna,
Yeah, with an antenna. Okay.
with the ability to put up a rather large and tall antenna if I want.
Mm-hmm.
I might be able to talk to both of them, but they may not be able to talk to each other.
Correct. And growing up, we played a game called CB tag, and that is where one person was it. They went and hid. So two cars could be sitting next to each other, and I'm hiding way over here, and I say, okay, I'm hid. This car here could hear it, but because of how the radio waves hits, this car barely hears it. So they see everybody else going off, and so then they move their vehicle just a little bit over, and now they're catching my signal.
Hmm.
One of my teachers told me to think of radio waves as ripples of water in a pond. You have your glass dish of water, and you put a drop in it, and you see how it modulates out. That's what the radio frequencies are like. So if you have a barrier over here, it's going to split the frequency or may have to go up and around it. And if you happen to be sitting behind that barrier, then you may not hear the signal as well.
I can understand that because I used to. My background is in telecommunications, but it's in like computer networking.
Mm-hmm.
People like even when I did field service, that they're one part of their house to the other part of their house. They had a big room that had mirrors, and they
Mm-hmm.
they had appliances. I had to explain to them, your signal is probably not going to work very well from point A to point B because it's not going to go through those. It's going to bounce off.
Yeah. Yeah,
Placing your equipment in a different place so it goes around that.
yeah. I found that you're not allowed to take walkie-talkies and ham radios to the hospital with you. One, because it interferes with their equipment, and two, their equipment interferes with your communications. But people don't take into effect that if they're in a concrete and steel building, their radio signal's not going to be able to penetrate to get out of that. If you are one of the groups brought up that he lives in a metal shed. He's got metal walls, metal roof, and he's like, well, if I put an antenna up in here, am I going to be able to hear anything? It's like, well, no, because the metal is going to reflect everything back inside. So he's got to figure out how to get his antenna up on top of his metal roof, and then the whole thing will act like a, like a giant electrical conductor, so to speak, and should give him better reach with his antenna, his equipment. So yeah, I mean, it could be just, even with here, if I stand on my porch and I can barely hear somebody, I walk down to the end of my ramp, I can now hear them. So location has a lot to do with it. Are they moving? Are they stationary? If they're both in their mobile vehicles and one's having problems hearing the other one, then one of them needs to stop. So that way, let the other person move. With you having your big base station, you can, say, okay, Georgette, I want you to stop. Hank, you're gonna drive around a little bit until they can hear each other. Not sure if I answered your question.
No.
Did it get it?
Dan, yeah.
Okay.
I'm still kind of confused on which equipment is the best suited, whether it's going to be, a little portable,
Portables lack the ability to put power to them. I have some walkie-talkies. Can you go grab one of mine off of the dehydrator? There's 3 of them up there. One is 4 watts, that's my CB. One is 5 watts, that's my GMRS, and then I have a 10 watt Bofang 10 meter. I can't increase the power on those. If I try to put an amplifier in from the radio to the antenna to get more power to it, I'm going to fry my handheld. Not saying I have a few radios, but I have a few radios. So this one's my CB one. I had to get a better antenna. to be able to be heard. And to, you know, I was receiving just fine, but nobody was hearing me. So when you have a mobile radio, a second here, and where am I gonna have it? I'm gonna have it here, I'm gonna have it here. Go to watch list. Just a second here, I'm gonna turn my share my screen again here. So this is my wish list in eBay. Just he already knows. So this is a radio a mobile radio station. You can also use it as a base station. It comes already with, I think, 100 watts to it. Because it's a 10 meter, it can go over the 4 watts. It's not CB. You have to have a ham license to operate this. I can come in here and where's it at? So I like Radio Oddity because they'll get you a whole basically package deal for what you can get. So let's look at here. Let's do this one. So this you can see here has 60 watts to it. You can then come in and add, oops, back here where the antenna is, you can put a short little jump in there and you can put a power amplifier there and then connect it into your antenna. So you may have a 60 watt radio, but you put in a 100 watt amplifier, you can now run at 100 watts. So that's getting more power out. And I've seen many truckers do that in their rigs, is that they'll put an amplifier in so they're running more than the 4 watts. Where's it at? There it is. There we go. So you can see here, it gives you the whole package deal. Comes with stand, gives an antenna that they recommend for it. It's got a mobile radio. It's got the 10 meter, and further down, you'll see that it has an amplifier. That gets you more power even if you're mobile. You can use the same setup for your base station. You're not limited to the power pre-programmed into a handheld.
I saw some, I forgot where it was. There was a picture of it and I thought I saved it, but it was basically a radio that size built into an ammo can.
Yeah. Yeah. If you look up Parks on the Air.
Huh?
Look up Parks on the Air, POTA. And those are mobile setups, and they're usually in an ammo can of some sort or a hard case box. You know what? I know where to find one. So there's a lot of videos on it, and I think this one is just a setup. This guy you can see is a little bit more complex. He does have everything that goes for his radio is all in this carry case right here. And he's got a lid to it. You see he's got the hard cases here to transport everything in. They can be as big and as complicated as you want, or like you said, they can be as small as an ammo can. So that's probably what you saw was on this one.
Something.
similar to that. So it's all set up to where all he has to do is plug this into his power supply, and then up here, oops. It's not gonna let me. Up here you can see the antenna. So all he has to do is put his plug his coax into there, plug his power into there, and he probably has a spot over here or the other side for his microphone to plug in, and that's all self-contained in one box.
Uh-huh.
Those are really popular, that you can take with you as much wattage as you want, as your power supply can handle. A lot of them use marine batteries for like boats and everything, just because they're rechargeable. They are heavier, but they can go a long time with them off of those. So that's another option. We go with the handhelds because we're not trying to get a lot of distance, and I can hang it on my belt or toss it in my pocket or whatever, and I can still. And yes, this is, they actually have a new one that came out that's that big now.
Uh-huh.
So they're getting smaller, but I wish they could put more power into them for getting out there. But yeah, I mean, you can do a mobile setup, a mobile radio with a power amp and an antenna in a vehicle, and that'll take care of any coverage. Should reduce the coverage issues, being able to reach each other. And then your base station, you can get a bigger radio that has more bells and whistles, fine-tune, multi-band, or you can just, do like what we did. All of us bought the same radio. We all have the same setup. The bonus to that is if something breaks, everybody knows how to fix it. You're gonna reduce the amount of spare parts that you need to bring with or have available. Did it answer the question a little bit more or muddy the water?
No, well, both, but my biggest problem, my point myself, no problem, but learning curve for the other folks, just getting them up to speed and having everything self-contained in that they just take the one thing and they're, go wherever, then you're more convenient for them. And they all have to worry about is power and antenna, and then
and then you also need to make sure that you're always using them. You're always practicing with them. I see a lot of people, they go out there and they got this great big fancy system. One guy spent $28,000 between an antenna tower, base station, power source, everything. And every day he's on the ham radio for beginners, asking questions. How do I do this? How do I do that? And everyone's like, well, do you have your license? Well, no. And then they're like, well, you don't need to be playing with that to begin with, because when you get your license, you're going to learn some of this. That's the biggest challenge. Is even with the technician's license, it's a lot of learning. I don't know if you're in our amateur radio group or not, but for Facebook, but I've been putting questions in there. I use, went to the wrong one. I use this program right here called Ham Radio Prep. It is a paid course. It's either $79 per course, or you can get a discount. I think I paid $150 for all 3 courses on it. And you can also have it on your phone. So no matter where you're at, you can pull it out and you can study. Come on, we're just waiting for my computer to catch up to me. So it breaks everything down into lessons, and at the end of each lesson is a quiz. And then at the end of everything, it has a random question generator. It randomly generates 10 questions. You have your practice test. You can either take it off of here, or you can go to the ARRL website. So there's two ways you can review, and it just gives you by chapter, by sub-element, or you can review your progress, see how far you've gotten. You can take a practice exam. It generates 35 questions from the 451 that are question pool. And this is what I've been doing. I'll randomly select 5 questions to put up on one day, and then the next day we do the answers. You can also print a practice exam to take with if somebody's has to do paper, learns better on paper. We recommend these 3 books.
Wow.
And, based on what you're going for, the technicians and the general come as cheaper to buy as a set, and then to get your extra later. They also have, you can also get where it's just the questions and the answers. So if somebody just wants to go in there and memorize the questions and the answers, it gets them past the test. It gets them onto the air. It gets them to actually start being able to use the knowledge they have. And then it catches up. You remember, oh, hey, yeah, I remember reading that on this page, or I remember this question, I remember that question. For not having any licensing or going through a lot of training, you're going to want to look at your CB radios. 10-meter radios technically can be converted to 11-meter frequencies. But the thing that you're running there is the 11-meter CB bands are supposed to be limited to 4 watts. There's a lot of people who do not pay attention to that. In an emergency, I don't think the FCC is going to say a whole lot about it. There really is no oversight right now as it is with CB radios. So, I mean, those are options. A lot of it's just getting the radio into their hand and getting them used to using it, how to turn it on, how to put, set up their antenna if they need to. If it's just going to be installed in their car, that's a lot easier. Being South Texas, I do recommend where you have the means of pulling the radio out and taking it with you, so that you don't literally fry it in the sun. In our heat, I've seen the heat in Arizona do nasty things to a CB left in a car, along with a 12-pack of soda didn't help. Any other questions?
No, not right now.
I am going to go ahead and I'm going to stop recording right now.